Thank you for this opportunity to share some ideas with you about the digital transition of construction. In many ways, my career of almost 30 years has been a story about the digital transition. I graduated as an architect in the early 90s when most architects were still using pens and pencils and drawing boards. AutoCAD was still running on the DOS operating system, and Windows 3.1 had just been released. A lot has happened, but not enough has changed. And hopefully I can share something from my own journey that will help you in your digital transition. Before we can talk about the digital transition, we must first agree that there's some intrinsic value or importance of information in our business. Otherwise, we can't discuss what problem digital is going to actually solve for us. Then we can discuss who is leading or who should be leading this digital transition. We can talk about some practical things like the adoption of standards, the rethinking of procurement, and building digital competency, which will facilitate this transition. And finally, a call to action, because it doesn't really matter what we discuss. If everyone goes back to doing the same thing they did yesterday, then no transition occurs. So to the first question, is there some intrinsic value or importance to information in what we do? This is a picture of Dublin. It's the city where I live and which I share with over 1 million other people. As you look at this picture, you can ask, at a practical level, is there anything more important to humanity than the built environment? The buildings and infrastructure that you see in this picture support almost every aspect of our lives, delivering almost everything we need as human beings, from clean drinking water, food, clothing, goods, energy, transport, communications, and the shelter or the places and the spaces where we live and we work or learn, where we eat and sleep, where we trade and play, where we love and laugh and cry and even pray. The built environment has an impact on every single person. Throughout history, those of us involved in the planning, the design, construction, and operations of the built environment have provided this critical infrastructure through our ability to collaborate and communicate with each other, to share knowledge and information in order to get things done. Nothing that you see in this picture has come about without information, and nothing gets used, maintained, or operated without information. Information is at the very core of what we do, and what we do is so critical and important to society. In fact, the scientists among you will confirm that everything you consider to be real is actually codified information, atoms, molecules, and structures that have come together to form the material world. Even the definition of the word information describes something in the process of creation or coming into being. There is no doubt that information has an intrinsic value or importance to every single person, and especially those of us involved in the built environment sector. So that raises the question, does information have to be digital? Of course not. We've proved and demonstrated over thousands of years that we can create and maintain the built environment without digital information. That isn't the issue. The core issue is the problem of scale. We simply can't meet the global demand for built infrastructure through the traditional process. Many around the world still lack the basic necessities that others have taken for granted. Even in a first world country like Ireland, our industry can't deliver sufficient housing, education facilities, healthcare, and other infrastructure needed for our society. Buildings are too expensive, too slow, it's too dangerous and wasteful, and it's having an enormous impact on the environment. The built environment is responsible for almost 40% of the global energy consumption and greenhouse gas emission. Regarding waste alone, over 30% and as much as 50% of the cost of construction is waste. Up to 30% of construction is rework. Labor in construction is only operating at 40 to 60% of potential efficiency. Accidents on site account for 3 to 6% of the total project cost. At least 10% and as much as 30% of materials delivered to site are wasted. Imagine that. the cost, the time, the effort, and the environmental impact of extracting raw materials to produce these products, transporting them around the world to construction sites, handling them on site, and then transporting them away to site to ultimately be put into landfill or recycling, to go through the whole process again. It's bizarre. The problem of scale is a real challenge. We have to do more for less. We can't simply do less, there's too much demand. We can't simply do more using the same resources and processes that we've previously used, because that just escalates the problem. We have to learn to do more for less. That isn't a simple thing. But if information is at the core of how we operate and collaborate and communicate, then we need to carefully look at the way we work with information. The reality is that even though we've been using computers and devices and digital tools since the 1990s, we still default to print everything back to paper or static PDFs to follow outdated practices. This image is a safety file or building logbook, the information provided on a real building in Dublin. Despite many people putting many hours of work, most likely using computers to produce this information, the end product is printed and stored in boxes of files, which have little value. The problem of analog information is that it's difficult to process, it's slow and cumbersome to use, it's abstract and difficult to understand, and that results in human error. It creates issues with storage, distribution, and wider access to information. There are challenges to indexing and retrieval of information when it's needed, and in this static format, it's difficult to update. Digital tools and processes help to solve many of these issues, vastly improving communications, productivity, outcomes, and performance. Does that mean machines are going to replace human beings in the future? Certainly, when it comes to performing tedious, mundane, laborious, and repetitive tasks, machines are much better suited to the job. They will work non-stop at maximum efficiency for as long as they can, without tea breaks or smoke breaks, holidays or sick days. And if your job only involves performing tedious, mundane, laborious, and repetitive tasks, then yes, a machine is probably going to replace you. But there are many things that humans are much better suited to do, like critical thinking, imagination, collaboration, making value judgments, etc. If we're going to achieve scale in our industry, it's not about replacing one thing for the other. It's about using both humans and machines to their best of abilities to do more for less. If we're going to make any significant improvement in the way we operate, then we need to talk about the quality of information and the impact that it has on the performance and outcomes of what we do. Can we apply a measure of quality on information? Is there such a thing as good information or bad information? And if quality impacts performance and outcome, then do we, as professionals operating in this industry, have some duty of care or moral or ethical responsibility to our colleagues, to our clients, to society at large, to provide information that will have a better outcome or better impact? We all know that those who have access to better information are at a distinct advantage, and those who are fed incorrect or corrupt information are at a distinct disadvantage. You simply have to look at current world affairs to see that if you want to control people, you restrict access to information or you provide misinformation. And if you want to enable and empower people, you give them access to open, transparent, good information. Of course, it's true that when you look at producing information in isolation, then producing accurate and complete information is the most expensive type of information in terms of the time and the effort involved. But when it comes to executing the physical construction or operations at work, the more complete, the more accurate the information, the cheaper, quicker, and safer the work. We all know that the most expensive, most disruptive, and most dangerous place to make any changes in the information is while trying to execute the work on site. And the quickest, cheapest, and safest place to coordinate and complete the information is before you attempt to execute the work on site. So why do we insist on leaving critical decisions and updates to the information to the worst time and place? We are all participants in this information workflow. We need information to do our jobs, and in doing our jobs, we are producing information that others will need to do their jobs. It is at these points of exchange of information or communication where there's an ethical responsibility on each of us to decide whether we're going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. So, who is leading or who should be leading this digital transition of your career, your business, your projects, your economy, your environment towards a more productive, more sustainable, and more prosperous future? If not you, then who? The interesting thing about leadership is that most people don't see themselves as leaders. Everyone seems to be waiting for somebody else to do something first. Clients are waiting for the government to mandate BIM. Designers are waiting for their clients to require BIM. Contractors are waiting for designers to use BIM. Building operators and asset owners are waiting for the contractors to provide BIM. The reality about leadership is that we are all both leaders and followers at the same time at some level in the complex hierarchy structure of society. On the one hand, we have a responsibility as a follower to ourselves and to those around us to learn from people who've gone before us, to benefit from their experience and knowledge, and not to reinvent the wheel and make the same mistakes. On the other hand, we have a responsibility as a leader to share the knowledge and information we gain with others in our group of influence, in our companies, in our project teams, to progress forward to a better future. If we don't take these responsibilities, our world and the world around us is worse off. Our progression in leadership is an ongoing endeavor to recognize and accept more responsibility and collaborate with others, both those we lead and those we follow, in collective efforts to improve the outcomes and benefits to all. True leadership is not about forcing people to do what they don't want to do or what you don't want to do. Leadership is about enabling and encouraging and inspiring others to join in a common objective. Leadership has to be through example and taking responsibility for creating the environments where people can succeed. The primary function of leaders is to clearly establish and communicate the value proposition, to motivate all the different participants or stakeholders and help them achieve or realize value for themselves, to drive lasting and sustainable adoption. At a practical level, one of the first and most important things we can do is adopt and implement digital information management standards. The curse of our fragmented industry is that everyone wants to do things in their own non-standardized way, which adds additional burden and cost and time to every single process of communication or exchange of information. Standards is one of those words that as soon as you hear it, you switch off. You imagine something boring or difficult, which is going to add additional burden or cost or time to what you do. But the reality is that standards are the reason things work incredibly well. The reason we have clean drinking water, safe food, reliable supplies of energy, infrastructure, safe shelter, healthcare, communications, technologies, all of these things depend on standards. Standards support consistency of outcome and repeatability or reuse of effort and information, leading to improvements in productivity. Standards make things better. In a prosperous and well-functioning society, the standards of almost everything are generally higher, and in corrupt and dysfunctional societies, the standards are generally lower. Standards are social agreements. They set expectations of quality and performance and outcome and responsibility on each person to behave and to carry out tasks or provide products and services in a way that's going to bring benefit to the group, community, or society as a whole. All human progress has been made because of these agreements or collaborations and cooperation between people, to collectively invest time and effort in making things better for the future, for the group and the community. Most of the standards needed for this digital future already exist. They just need to be adopted and implemented. As individuals, organizations, groups, project teams, even as an industry, we should not be ignoring or avoiding these standards or even reinventing the wheel. We should be embracing and following these standards to our collective benefit. One of the challenges with standards is that many corrupt business models have been based on exploiting ambiguous, wasteful, and inefficient non-standardized practices for financial gain. And the implementation of standards, together with the clarity and transparency that brings, threatens to disrupt these powerful business models. But even if you understand the importance of standards, it's still easier to do nothing than it is to do something. As individuals, we are biologically hardwired for self-preservation of energy and to preserve the status quo, to be cautious, selfish, and lazy, living in the moment. It takes a deliberate and concerted effort to overcome these instincts, to be considerate to others, to be industrious and long-term thinking, to be conscious of ourselves, but also thinking of others and our combined futures. The second practical step is to carefully consider the relationship of information to procurement strategies. Procurement is not the same as purchasing something that exists. That is a much simpler transaction because both parties know exactly what they're getting. Procurement is about purchasing something that doesn't exist, that isn't known or certain. It's the process of bringing the unknown into being, making order out of chaos. And as we agreed earlier, nothing comes into being without information. The more complete, more accurate, and more useful the information that describes the future state of something, the less unknown, less uncertain the outcome. It is important to carefully describe this future state before you try and physically execute the work. The greatest benefit of digital construction is the ability to build something twice. Once in the software environment, where you don't have to spend real materials or put real lives at risk, to try and remove as much of the unknown and uncertain as possible, and then to build it a second time physically on site with real labor and materials. It's incredible how many people are still doing this backwards, building on site in the traditional way and then following afterwards with the digital model. Poor quality, corrupt information will always lead to poor outcomes and poor performance. We need procurement strategies that enable this process of building twice. We need to look beyond the adversarial and competitive win-lose practices based on fear and control and scarcity, and particularly the late engagement of parties with insufficient time to complete their information beforehand. There is enough demand to keep us all busy. We don't need to spend our time on wasteful, non-value-add administration of procurement, trying to put each other out of business. We need to find win-win, sustainable business arrangements based on true collaboration and abundance. We need to see procurement as an infinite game, not a zero-sum game. There is no honor in getting the lowest price on a project if it delivers a poor product and destroys the livelihood of other organizations in the process. Since the quality of information will determine the outcome and the performance, procurement contracts must be based on collaborative business models closely tied to information management. That is the gold standard. A third practical consideration is around competency to operate in this digital environment. This requires an honest assessment at a personal level, a company level, a project level, and even at an industry or country level. The technologies, processes, and standards for digital have been around for some time now. What's missing is the general capability or competency of people in the industry to use these. If digital competency broadly existed, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The reality is that there is a significant shortage of digital skills across the sector. Many people still think that BIM is something that applies to other people, not themselves. But if you engage in any way in the planning, design, construction, or operations of buildings or infrastructure, then you're going to interact with digital information. You can't avoid it. We all need to take personal responsibility to build our own skills and those around us. In this fast-paced world of ongoing technological development and continuous change, we have to remain both student and teacher at all times. We can't be complacent with outdated knowledge that we learned many years ago. Unfortunately, when it comes to competency and associated outcomes, there is no equality. Of course, we should strive to equality of opportunity for all, but people will have different abilities or willingness or even motivations to take up that opportunity. In the 1800s, an Italian economist, Pareto, describe the principle of the 80-20 rule of cause and effect. We have to recognize that 80% of the effect is going to come from the 20% in the higher end of the competency distribution. And that suggests that we should initially focus our attention on those who want to change and can change to get the digital transition over the chasm of critical mass adoption. Others will follow later, and unfortunately, some won't survive. Building competency is not about acquiring all knowledge as an individual. That's impossible. There's too much information. It's about acquiring sufficient knowledge for you to network and collaborate with others who have complementary knowledge. The most formidable people are those who are able to adapt to change. And finally, a call to action. We need to go beyond thinking and talking and take action if we're going to affect the change that's required to produce a more efficient, productive, safer, sustainable, and inclusive construction industry. The digital transition is a journey, it's not an event. In fact, it's been occurring for over 30 years now, and it's not going away. It's just evolving, whether you're paying attention or participating or not. Action is about movement, about doing something, going somewhere, making something, moving from where you are now to a better future. We are beings of action. We act in the world and the world acts on us. We are always doing something. Even when we're not doing something, our inaction has some effect or consequence. That's life. The future doesn't come to us. We need to move towards it. Movement describes a journey from the past to the present, to the future. You need a map for the journey, some direction, some reason to move, a purpose. And the purpose is progress, making a better future for ourselves and those around us, or at least not allowing a worse future to emerge. Without intentional, purposeful, and directed action, our thoughts and conversations are just wishful thinking or empty words. There's a price to pay in action. You have to spend energy, invest time, resources, make an effort, or give up something that's holding you back. The journey won't be straightforward. We will encounter tools and obstacles along the way, opportunities and threats. We need to decide what is relevant or irrelevant to know how to respond and navigate. Some of the things we encounter will be known, predictable. Others will be unknown or unpredictable. We have to navigate between the order and the chaos. The potential to explore and discover or learn something new often lies in the unknown. Of course, the past has some relevance in that we can learn from it, but we can't change it, so it shouldn't be an obstacle. We have to carefully consider what motivates us to move forward and what stops us along this journey. By nature, we are all creative, not in the sense of being artistic, but in the sense of having the ability to think about a problem in the past or present or future. We can imagine possible solutions or future scenarios. We can communicate and discuss these with other people to either test our ideas or form collaborative partnerships to get more complex things done, which will require the skills or capabilities or resources of others, which we may not have individually. We can formulate plans, and then we can put these plans into action. We can make something happen. We can bring a future into being. Not everybody is artistic, but everybody is creative. We need to recognize and appreciate our own creative ability and also the same ability in others. The cost of technology is a cheap commodity when compared with this creative human value. What happens if we don't take action? Physics tells us that the natural state of everything is entropy. In other words, simply left to their own, things will degrade and deplete into chaos. It takes continuous energy, effort, work, resource to bring things into order or being, and to keep them there. There are no short-term fixes. We all naively long for a simple life where everything good just happens to us by accident, without any effort or action. But that is not how things work. Life is a continuous, habitual, and deliberate movement forward through effort and action towards a goal. And if not, it easily slips back into chaos. Progress is always uphill, fighting against gravity or entropy. Intentional, purposeful, directed action is what's required to bring all human progress into being. Everything we've discussed involves the interaction between people. There's no significant achievement that comes about without the contribution of a dedicated group of people working towards a common cause.
There is something very special and powerful that happens when a group of people bring together their diverse and individual knowledge, strength, ingenuity, and creativity to the task. It's not merely a sum of the parts. The interaction and collaboration brings out new possibilities in each person as they build off each other to collectively advance the common pursuit. The outcome is exponential. This is the power of community. The word community describes the condition of people sharing or having certain characteristics, attitudes, and interests in common. Of course, community doesn't work without communication, or the exchange of ideas, knowledge, or information to help bring people together to get things done. In fact, community and communication have the common root word. Obviously, you don't need digital for communication, and communities have survived for thousands of years without digital. But communication is dramatically facilitated and enhanced by digital technologies, and you could say that the sole purpose of technology is as a tool to aid better communications, or the exchange of information and knowledge between people to get things done in better ways.
There are three characters in our story of the digital transition. There are those who take up the responsibility to manage, coordinate, and propagate, and even facilitate the production and exchange of good quality information. Information that is digital and accurate and organized, up to date, timely, and accessible. They will bring about a better functioning, more efficient, more productive, and more sustainable, and even safer built environment to provide the critical infrastructure that supports our society. They are part of the solution. They are the heroes of the story. Then there are those who avoid responsibility, or purposefully, or maybe carelessly corrupt, obstruct, or perpetuate the production of and exchange of poor quality information that is analog, incomplete, disorganized, outdated, late, inaccessible. They create the challenges we face in a poor functioning, less efficient, less productive, less sustainable, and unsafe built environment, hindering the critical infrastructure that supports our society. They are part of the problem. They are the villains in our story. Of course, there are many others who are undecided about their moral or ethical position towards information. Maybe they haven't considered their position or tried to understand the impact of their actions on others in the broader community or society. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they feel they have no choice or they're just doing what they're told. They are the victims in our story. Doing the right thing and doing the easy thing are seldom the same thing. Doing nothing or simply going along with the flow is easy, but it doesn't make anything better. Improving the quality of information and the performance and outcome requires brave, courageous, noble, and even virtuous people who are willing to do the right thing, to make things better for themselves and for those around them. I encourage each of you to act like a hero instead of a villain or a victim. Make your career, your business, your projects, and even your industry great. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this has been helpful for your journey. If you'd like to find out more about these principles I've discussed today, you can download a series of articles I've written on each one at the link provided here. If you'd like to get in contact with me, here are my details. I'm always happy to help people on this journey where I can.